Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
how's everyone doing?
Oh,
Very good. Very
ve-
good.
very good and very happy to see my old and new friend, Eve,
Yes.
and
Yes.
also a coworker from many years ago and for quite a while, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if I remember right, I think I started working at the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, Newark campus. I think it might have been 19, I don't know, was it 1986? I was there for 28 years, right? And I moved here to Portland when my daughter had a baby about 11 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But way back when, even I were colleagues, right?
Yes.
So I'd like to read an introduction for Eve, right? Eve Duncans is the founder and CEO of the Art of Mindful Living Corporation. The Art of Mindful Living is comprised of over 25 years of steadfast, dedicated service in the artistry of optimizing human potential. Her vocation is principally focused on mental health, raising public consciousness through advocacy and education, and advancing social causes by creating systemic and legislative changes. Power, purpose, and passion are the bedrock of her success. And she knows firsthand the challenges of persevering and the triumphs of thriving and overcoming. Before earning a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Rutgers University, a Master of Social Work from New York University, and a prominent career full of accolades, awards, and achievements, she was a survivor herself. At the peak of her career, Evelyn resigned to the public and private sector and left her position as CEO to embark on a global humanitarian tour. Inspired by her journey, she wrote about her philosophies of deep transformational change and empowered living in her memoir, The Woman in the Mirror: A Journey into the Authentic Self. Evelyn embodies the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi: be the change you want to see in the world. So, very warm welcome, Eve, to the Talking Back to Suicide podcast.
That's a nice
Thank
bio.
you.
I love
Thank you
bio.
so much. Thank you. I have to make sure that I thank the person that wrote it. Very much. It was very, very well written. I'm like,
And you lived
what's she talking about? Oh, she's talking about me. Okay.
it.
You know what's interesting about this, as you mentioned that we were colleagues and friends from a long time ago. I remember, and you know who, Donald Bay. Remember Nurse,
Oh, yes, Donald. Yes,
right?
Donald.
We had a very special group of people, and Donald Bay gave me a poster, and it was with that quote: "Be the change you want to see in the world." And I remember being so struck by that, right? Because it was at a time in my life where I felt like I was full of like so much pain and trauma. And, here I am in this place trying to help children heal from their trauma. And I'm doing all this humanitarian work. And it's like, be the change you want to see. It's like, that really like it struck in my spirit, and I felt like I just took that with me always. Make sure that you're the change, whatever you're putting out there, whatever you're saying, however you're trying to teach or heal, or that you embody that, because we need that reflected back to us, especially from our leaders and our teachers. Like, be the change you want to see in the world. And I thought that was it was I always kept that in mind when it came to my healing journey. And even as I grew professionally and personally, I'm like, make sure that you set an example. And it was more about, if I can do it, you can do it too. So It's funny that you would read that, and that coming from somebody that we both obviously are connected to, it kind of feels like full circle in a way. But
Yes, yeah, and I remember saying his name again, Donald. He was a wonderful man.
oh yeah,
Just
absolutely, absolutely. But we were full of gems. I mean, I remember. I mean, I have to say this. Just you being this person that we all admired. You had a way, because I think that a lot of us, whether we said it out loud or not, we had our own history and our own reasons why we were doing the work that we were doing. And a lot of us had this history of abuse and pain and trauma, and we would come to work. And of course, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, we're trying to resolve our own issues as we're also trying to make a difference in somebody else's life. But it was people like you that gave us something to look forward to. Like, you just came in with such ease and grace and knowledge and wisdom and an ability to really like zone in at the issue and be able to get to the core issue of what was happening. I remember even in our meetings, like everything that you would say, it was always so just on point. And we would, we were young and starting in our careers and in our early 20s, and we would talk about, oh, did you hear what she said? Wow, that was powerful, right? Yeah, that was on point. So thank you for that.
thank you so much, Eve, for sharing that. I'm thinking of what you said too, and what Donald had shared, and Mahatma Gandhi and others have lived, that idea of be the change in the world. And that change does not necessarily at all mean that one wins an accolade, right?
Yeah.
It's how you live your life, right?
Absolutely.
And I love what you said about that change that we may have needed growing up, right? In a sense, the wound is like the wounded healer, right?
Yeah.
That wishes things had been different back then, but you're doing your best to create the change now. And then it's reflected to you. You hear, right? That's you hear and see that there's been a change, even if there's just one person affected.
Absolutely.
And I want to share with you something that I shared with Kino the other week or so. And the backstory is what's important. So I just learned that the National Poetry Therapy Association, which has a annual contest, not contest, it has an annual conference. And I myself have a background in poetry therapy and story. However, I am not a poetry therapist. I'm like you might know this, like ABD, all but dissertation. I had done all the work, all the courses, all the groups, all the supervision, but then I got totally exhausted and I did not put the book together. And also I already was doing poetic work, volunteer work, at Integrity House, which you may remember, right, drug and alcohol rehab program in Newark.
Yes.
Well, this goes back many years ago when I was doing that. Well, I just learned that the National Association of Poetry Therapy is giving me their Outstanding Achievement Award this April. Now, but I want to tell you the backstory.
Congratulations.
The backstory is when I was a young girl, maybe, I don't know, 8 years old, feeling jealous of my older siblings who were 5 and 7 years older, and always getting all sorts of awards and recognitions.
Oh wow!
And then I think also I had trouble making friends. I was a very lonely little girl. Well, I plagiarized 2 poems.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and one of those poems about the moon, both of them were by anonymous. Right, so maybe I had some moral compass if I knew what the word anonymous meant when I was 8 years old. Right? But one of those poems was published in a school-wide publication. And then I got found out.
Wow.
And my mother, who was a like elementary school guidance counselor,
Oh, wow.
so she had a heart for children. So she knew that I was troubled, and that's why I did that. So she was not angry at me. But my dad was really angry at me for what I did. And there was also a second poem, but nobody ever found out about that. So to go from the child who needed that recognition, or not, at that point, it wasn't even recognition. Maybe I wanted to be a poet. Maybe I wanted to say things, but
so
I didn't value my own voice, or I thought somebody else's voice was better. So I kind of used them. And to go in life to becoming a writer, a poet, helping other people with their creativity, to being acknowledged by the National Association of Poetry Therapy, it's in a way that's also being the change, right?
That's
and
so
that you never know
wow.
where your life will take you, and also where those hurts are going to take you. How do we transform that hurt into healing for ourselves, right? Like reclaiming your own voice and encouraging others to have their voice in the full meaning of what voice means. So in a way, I think accepting that recognition, I want to accept it on behalf of all those who feel that they don't have a voice, right? But we all do.
This is really taking me back. I actually remember a team meeting, and this is so interesting. I remember, I'm actually a little bit nervous just remembering that moment. It's really like tugging at my heart. I remember being in a team meeting and we were discussing, I can't remember exactly who, but I remember we were discussing a very challenging client. And I'm not sure why or how the discussion got there, but I remember you saying that sometimes children just don't have the words, the vocabulary to express how they feel. And I thought that was so interesting because I remember that season of my life being a time where I needed to find the words to put to the pain that I felt that I just didn't know how to process, and not having the words. And a lot of my journey was that, just learning to find my voice, to understand, right, and put words into that pain that I was feeling so that I could finally release it, so that I could finally let it go. And that was, wow, this is interesting. But yes, words are so powerful. I mean, they're so cathartic, right? And we don't always have the words to really express how we feel. And thank God and thank the universe and thank all there is for people that are able to put things into words that sometimes we can, right, channel and help us also process and dive deep into that space of healing, because it's so needed. And I know that there's a lot of people that need for others to lend them their voice until they find their voice. And that's so powerful. That is powerful. So
Speaking
congratulations.
of Maya Angelou, right? Wasn't there a period in her life related to, I think that she may have been sexually abused or in childhood, that she became mute for a number of years?
Yes. I mean, I think a lot of women that have struggled with that deep-seated pain, that deep-seated trauma, and are able to come out on the other side, find some artistic way to be able to unleash that power that we have within ourselves, to be able to heal and transform. And I mean, Maya Angelou, but there's so many women that are now speaking about that truth, right? About going through these periods of life that were very hard. Some of them because of sexual abuse, right? Gender related violence, because of suicidal ideations, depression, anxiety. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. But when you find your voice, I mean, that's for me, that's where it all clicks. You know, when you find your voice within, that's when something happens, and there's like a paradigm shift. You start like a new narrative. You begin a new narrative with that new truth that's coming out, that voice that is, you know, that is ignited. It starts to tell you, hey, don't listen to that old narrative. You know, don't listen to what your mind is telling you, because you've been conditioned to think a certain way based on your trauma, based on your pain, based on the circumstances, but that's not who you are, right? And then all of a sudden there's new words, right? And it is kind of like poetry, like that new narrative that's birthed inside of us. And some of us find these beautiful artistic ways to express it and share it with others. And that's beautiful too. But yeah, the power of words, it's, for me, there's nothing like it. There really isn't.
I'm struck too, Eve, when you shared that so many of us in the healthcare field, and one could also narrow it into the mental health care field, have our own personal reasons for why we're drawn to that field, whether it's specific experiences that we had in our own life, or our immediate family had, or our extended family had. And I'm wondering, I want to ask you a question about this.
Sure.
That never, and I guess the idea would be that somebody thought it would be inappropriate to do so, right? Or there's a boundary and one should not ask this. But never in 28 years, right, of being at a mental health, facility, as an attending, as a medical director, and the medical school, all that. Was there any conversation about any of us sharing our personal stories?
Oh, I know.
Right? Never.
Never.
Never, ever. Anything. Who would like to share? You don't have to share.
Yes.
You could share, but say this is not. But say, unless I tell you this is me,
Yes.
right? Then
Yes.
assume that it's not me, but it's just somebody I knew in my family. There was
Absolutely.
never any conversation about that.
Never. And I think one of the reasons that I decided to leave the field altogether and just become my own independent entity, if you will, if you want to call it that, it was because of that. It was because I was so ready to talk about my truth, and I knew that a lot of my colleagues were going through it. I want to say maybe out of 10 colleagues that I had, especially like out of 10 female colleagues, I want to say maybe 8 or 9 had history of traumatic abuse or sexual assault or something of the kind. Nobody would talk about it. Nobody would. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting. I'm not alone in this. I'm not the only one that feels smothered by this pain that is suffocating me, literally suffocating the life out of me. I'm not the only one, but nobody's talking about it. And so by not talking about it, right, people are not normalizing that it's okay to say I am not okay, that it's okay to say I need support, that it's okay to say I need help, that it's okay to say, you know what, I'm in therapy. I need to put myself first, right? We get into these fields where we basically keep saying, I'm not important, I'm not a priority, right? Especially when we're talking about like, the population that we were working with, right? Where they had like severe, whether it be like behavior issues or, suicide issues or, suicidal ideations, depression. So the client becomes your primary focus for so long that to shift that focus and then say, I'm a priority. My mental health is a priority. My well-being is a priority. It rarely happens, right? And you stay focused on that. And And it's so for me, I kept hearing my stories through the patients that I was seeing. And, I have a very, very traumatic upbringing. And so I went from, experiencing sexual abuse as a child to physical abuse to being gang raped as an adolescent to being held against my will for 2 years in an apartment where I was repeatedly raped and physically abused. And then after all of that, after escaping that situation, after coming out of that situation and trying to get myself into school, which is a whole miracle story in itself, meeting Liz Evia, who's my guardian angel. She was a social worker, which is why I went into social work. And she helped me get into Rutgers University. And at that time, I didn't even have a high school degree. But I took the entry exam and I aced everything. And so Rutgers gave me a high school diploma. I never even had a high school degree at this point. But all of that trauma and not knowing how to navigate systems, etc., I ended up living in a car, homeless. And it was the people in the school that again helped me navigate and helped me get into, a dorm room and like help me get out of that situation. And it was just trauma after trauma after trauma. Later on in my adulthood, when I, in my adult relationships, they mimicked my past. They mimicked my upbringing. And so I'm literally servicing these children and I'm listening to their stories and they're telling my story. And I'm not even in a position at that point to even say my story to myself. I remember I had a therapist for 6 years, and the last time I saw her, I told her my story. She says, "You've been in therapy for 6 years, you've never told me your story." And it was just my voice had been completely silenced, right? There were no words to express the amount of pain and anguish that these experiences were how they lived in my being. And the whole time I'm here working and doing all these, different projects and I'm growing professionally. And, I ended up at, being a CEO and like I said, getting all these accolades and awards, but I felt so empty and nobody knew that the entire time I had just been planning my own suicide. Like the entire time I just kept, planning, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. And quietly in my head, because I didn't know how to deal and manage that pain that was so consuming. I still, even with all that I was doing and all the growth professionally, I never grew emotionally in terms of being able to process and be able to deal with those deep-rooted issues and that deep-rooted pain that still was very, very raw, in my life. And like you said, nobody was telling me how to put words to them. And even in therapy, it's so interesting. Now when I talk to people and I tell them, like, if I do coaching, but if you need therapy, make sure that you're paired up with somebody who is, who's bringing you to this point where you're able to open up and disclose and, challenging you to go deeper, challenging you to put words to your pain and process that pain. Because it is, I think that, certain, for some of us, because I obviously was in that situation, the pain just became unbearable. And when that pain becomes unbearable, and I'm sure that people that are listening to this podcast, people that, maybe somebody is referring them to this podcast because they know that they need to listen to a word of hope. I'm sure that they're at a point where it just, the emotional pain is starting to weigh on them physically. That's how I felt. I felt like my heart was crushing, like something was crushing my lungs. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was suffocated by the pain. I was, and so much anguish that I really felt that ending my life was the only exit for me. And it wasn't about, there's a big difference. It wasn't about not wanting to live. It was about not wanting to feel the pain anymore. And so for me, it was so important to understand that you could put words to your pain. There's ways to process, and there's more than one way to do that. There's ways to channel that pain and transform that pain into power. We can literally like alchemize that pain and transform it and make it something beautiful even. I mean, it's like when you're on the other side, it's hard to imagine that our pain that's so consuming could become something so beautiful, but it can. And that's really important to put out there.
I'm sighing with what you've just released, right? Yes. And the tagline to the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention is inspiring beauty from darkness.
Yes. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. You know, in some ways, I'm really happy that, sometimes I'm against social media, sometimes I'm for it, depends, on the day. But I'm really happy that there's platforms for us to be able to share information. And a lot of suicide prevention information gets shared. Of course, there's misinformation that also gets shared. But one positive thing that I've seen is that people are understanding that suicide, it doesn't discriminate, right? It doesn't know gender, it doesn't know socioeconomic status, it doesn't know race, it doesn't know anything, right? It happens, and it can happen to any of us. I think that people, like, the world gets really shocked when we hear of these celebrities that they seem to embody joy and even, be the example of like what I wish I could be. Oh, because a lot of us that are going, through these like suicide ideations or depression, we always think, and I'm going to speak for myself, right? But there's this general idea, if my life was, if it was like this, if it was like that, if this never happened, there's an if, a big if, then I wouldn't feel this way. I wouldn't be challenging, myself to want to end it all but no, that, when you think about ending your life, there's this deep void that causes a surmountable pain that is so overwhelming and so overpowering that you think that by ending your life, you're ending that pain, and that's all you think about. It has nothing to do with where your life is right now. I am a testament that your life, where you are, your circumstances, where you're born, what you've been through, it doesn't define you. It doesn't define your life. It doesn't define where you're going to take your life, what you're going to amount to, what you can build, how you can design your life. You can truly design the life that you want. You have to face the pain. You have to be able to process that pain. And we can't ignore it, and we can't wish it away, and we definitely can't escape it. We gotta keep going, we gotta keep moving, right? And we gotta find the space to say, okay, I feel you, I see you, acknowledge it, right? Acknowledge it. I see you, I feel you, I hear your cry. Because a lot of that time, those cries that we hear is the little boy or the little girl that was hurt, that was in pain. That adolescent that went through those horrific, experiences. That's the cry in our soul. That's the cry in our spirit. And it's so important to acknowledge that and to be in a space where you can acknowledge it and process that pain. But, we think that, for whatever reason, that if only things were different, I wouldn't feel this way. No, it's really about being able to sit with your pain and release that pain that was never supposed to be a part of you. And so I think that's really important, and like I said, it's a good thing that we're seeing that suicide has a lot of different faces. It really does, and it can affect anyone. And when we're dealing with these ideations and with these thoughts, it's so important to seek out help, to seek out someone, to talk to someone, because I one thing that I can guarantee is that you are not alone. There's somebody that you've probably been talking to every single day that knows pain, that understands pain, and can sit with you. And maybe they haven't gone through exactly the same thing that you've been through, but pain is something universal that hole that it has in our hearts and in our spirits, and two people just listening to each other could make a world of difference. And I think that's important. Like all these little things when we talk about suicide prevention, it's the little things, it's the big things, it's the small efforts, it's the big efforts, it's all of it.
I'm thinking too, Eve, that in being with someone in their pain, that person who's with you is that, in a sense, validating. But I'll also put it in quotation marks, because if you're in pain, you don't need somebody's validation that you're in pain, right? It's real, and that's what you're experiencing. But they're seeing you. They're seeing your suffering.
That's right.
And also, I think they see that you are more than your pain. Like, yes, there is pain, but the I that is you is greater than the pain. Because when a person is in such severe pain, and I myself have experienced that, and when I was in my 20s in medical school, I attempted suicide. The only thing that I could think of was the pain that I was in. Nothing else was in my mind. And you could also think about, and this may seem like a ridiculous comparison, but if you really hurt your toe, you stubbed your toe, the only thing you're thinking about, and your whole body goes into your toe, right? So your sense of self has been shrunk and expanded at the same time to be filled with pain. So in being with someone who can see you, they are really seeing you. They're seeing your pain, but they're also seeing the you that is larger than that.
That's right.
That is also real.
Yeah.
That the person in pain at that moment is not able to remember. Right? And that expansion, I think, is multifold. They're seeing the past of you. That was not necessarily that pain. They're seeing the present of you that maybe a day before was not filled with pain. They're seeing the future of you, right? So, and yet the focus needs to be on, I see your suffering. I see that, and I feel that, and I'm in pain too. I'm not taking away your pain.
That's right.
But it's paining me to know how much you're suffering.
Yeah. I think, two things I love to practice is to be able to say, I see you, I hear you. I see you, I hear you. Those two things I feel like are so powerful, because for the most part, people that are in a lot of pain feel invisible. For me, I thought it was really interesting, and I write about this, that people saw that I was getting these opportunities professionally, and that I was growing, and that I was doing all these things, but nobody saw me. Like, I would drive home in tears, and I would wake up just thinking to myself, how am I going to get through this day? Am I going to make it through this day, or is this going to be the day that I end it? And that was a constant for me. And I remember I had these goals in my last 9 to 5. I had these goals, and I would say I wanted to. There was a legislation that I wanted to get passed, and it was for kids to be able, young victims of sexual assault to be able to go to a CAC where they were able to, see the detectives and get forensic interviews and see a mental health specialist and get a DNA testing, everything in one facility. So they weren't dragged through the systems and dragged, from one place to another. And I thought, wow, what a beautiful thing, right? And I just fell in love with the mission, and I thought my goal is to make this legislatively mandated. I want this to be legislated. I want this to be something that is mandated for victims. And so I was able to achieve that. But nobody knew that I was so driven because for me, that was going to be the last thing I did. That was going to be my check off, right? And then I was going to go off and that was it, and I just wanted to do something so that other, kids that came along with my same story didn't have to go through what I went through without the support, without, the help they needed. Nobody saw that. Nobody saw through the facade, right? Like we develop these personas, these false selves that, they can be very shiny and bright and, very cheerful. And we become whatever we want to become so that the world doesn't see our pain. And I was so desperate for someone to see my pain. And I remember I would say, little things here and there. And I remember I'm like, if someone could just give me a word of hope or something. And I mean, believe it or not, I have like this crazy miracle story that true story. When I was leaving my job and I had resigned as CEO, I went to a retreat. Somebody, invited me to a retreat. And I went prepared to never leave this place. And I wrote in my journal, and I just remember I'm not a religious person, but I'm a very spiritual person. And I just remember saying, God, if it's meant for me to keep living, like, you got to give me a sign because this is it. And there's nobody here. The place was like 3 hours away, like in Pennsylvania, in the middle of the woods. I knew that my family and friends were not there. Like I knew that nobody was gonna come looking for me, that nobody was gonna find me. Like I just knew, hey, this is really it. And I said, well, this is my goodbye. And I remember writing, I still have this journal. And I said, if I don't get a sign before midnight, I am not going to wake up till another day. I'm done. And around, it was past 11, because I remember thinking, it's going to be midnight. And somebody knocked on my door. And I remember it was this elderly woman that was staying in that place. She had come to accompany her daughter to the retreat. She must have been in her 80s. She could barely walk. She knocked on the door, and I opened the door, and I had no idea, like, why this woman was at my door. And she says to me, and she had seen me in the reception area, the power of somebody being able to see you. She had seen me in the reception area. And she knocked on my door and said, something told me that you need a hug. That was all. That woman saved my life that night. I didn't know her. I had never met her before, but she saw me. And there is so much power in being able to tell somebody, I see you, I hear you, I feel you. Because sometimes that is all you need to just keep holding on. And that for me was, I mean, I don't even, I don't know if this person is alive or not. It was just, oh my goodness, it was so powerful for somebody that had never met me before. And you could only, and I've had experiences where I go and speak somewhere and people come up to me and tell me the same thing, like, I was ready to end it all, you know, until I heard you speak. And so just the power of sharing, you know, the power of sharing our voices, our words. Sometimes, you know, maybe you don't have the exact words that that person needs to express their pain. All you gotta say is, I hear you, I see you, and they'll feel that. I felt it, you know? It's powerful.
It was genuine what she did, right?
Yes.
Because if it wasn't genuine, you wouldn't have felt it.
Yeah. I mean, I can never forget this experience, you know, just somebody knocking on my door. She apparently went and went to reception and told people, like, you know, gave a description of me. I found this out later. Like, you know, she's like, I really need to give this girl a hug. So, you know, I found out the backstory, you know, afterwards. And it was, you know, it's something else, you know. And sometimes I think that even for us, when like you said, right? We don't nurture, or not nurture, but like we don't even normalize being able to go up to somebody and say, "Are you okay?" And for that person to feel that it's okay to tell you, "I'm not okay." You know, what we do is we normalize saying, "Hi, how are you doing? I'm good, and you?" And that's it. And that person could be going through so many things, right? But what if we normalize saying, how are you? I'm listening. How are you? I'm listening. Tell me, share with me. I mean, it shifts the conversation and the energy and the intention, right? To a place where you can actually provide a safe space for people to seek the help that they need when they need it. But you know, that's
Just from what you just said, Eve, I was thinking the terrible paradox that it can be more fearful to let someone know how you're feeling than
absolutely,
the fear of killing yourself.
absolutely being vulnerable. Like, we shy away from vulnerability. Nobody wants to be vulnerable because, you know, at the end of the day, when you've been hurt, right, to the extent that you feel like there's nothing left, you tend to build this wall to protect yourself. And you know, that's what I did, right? Like, I built a wall around me, and I was hoping that by building that wall, I would avoid any more hurt to come into my life. But I didn't realize that I was also not allowing anything else to come into my life. I wasn't allowing the space to be open and vulnerable so that the support and the help and the love that I needed and the healing that I needed to transpire, but that to also happen for me, right? And so it is a defense mechanism, right? If we stick to our mental health training, you know, to some of us deal with denial. For me, denial was huge, right? If I could just, you know, forget about it
And
and you know,
compartmentalization.
compartmentalize, dissociate, all of these things, right? And so when you use all these like negative coping mechanisms, like, you know, being vulnerable and sharing that, you know, that's so difficult for some of us that are, you know, going through all this pain. I I remember having a conversation with my cousin. I went to go visit her in North Carolina, and she says, "Your life seems great. I just don't understand why you're telling me that you're depressed and that you're suicidal." You know, she's like, "I just don't get it." And I didn't have the words. And I remember it was like one of the only times that I ever tried to reach out to somebody. And I didn't have the words to tell her why. But she said something to me. She said, "Close your eyes. What do you see?" And I remember telling her, I said, "I see myself with just wounds all over me. Like, you know, just open wounds and just ravished." When I said that, I started to understand the pain. I felt ravished. I felt violated. And that opened something up for me to say, there are words that I can say, that I can express. But it took a lot. Like it was so frightening, like you said, to allow anybody to see that part of me, right? Because once I tell you my story, I think that you're going to see me the way I see myself. And when you're in all of that pain, you think you're not good enough. You think that you're not, you're not enough in any type of way. Like your self-worth is so low. Like, your insecurities are high. Your self-worth is low. It's all of these different things, right? And you believe everything, every bad word, every negative thing that was spoken to you during all those incidents of abuse. You believe that to be your truth. You believe that narrative. So because you see yourself in this way, because you see yourself through the lens of that narrative, you think if I tell you my truth, you're going to see me the way I see me. Right? So it's so, like you said, it's so important to just be able to say again, like, I see you, not your trauma, not what happened to you, not the pain, not the victimization. I see you. I see you perfect, whole, and complete. I see you, the person that you were born to be, your authentic self, the power in you, the light in you, the love in you, all of that. I see you in your perfection, right? And knowing that and hearing that, it does something that is not superficial. It digs deep, right? It creates a shift inside of you. For me, it became, all of these little things were, these stepping stones, right? And kind of carving my path out of this place that I was in to the life that I live now, right? And it's powerful. Like these platforms that talk about these issues, I wish that we would normalize talking more about it. And like you said, I wish that a lot of us can feel more comfortable speaking about, especially those of us who have overcome it, to speak about that space that we were in, so that people know, it's not just you. You're not alone. A lot of us have gone through this, and it's okay. It's okay to feel that, and it's okay to say, "Hey, I need to hold on, but can I hold on to you? Because I don't think I can do it alone. Like I really need to hold on, but can I hold on to you?" And for us to be willing to extend our hand and say, "Yeah, it's okay to hold on. I'm here." Right? And that those are the conversations that I'm hoping that will become normalized, right? That shift in our communities, like with our loved ones, our families, our friends, and even in these platforms, so that we can share these kind of things.
I know you have been taking it all in.
Yes.
This is one of the first podcasts where it's not really host and interview, where I'm here to ask questions and then you're going to give me the answers to those questions and the solutions that we're facing in the world today. And this is why, Kim, you are a global speaker. Because right now, all I want to do is sit here and listen to what you have to say. I'm going to be honest, take it all in, go back, reflect on it, and then practice it in my life. And this is exactly what the listeners need to do. Because there's no question right now that I can ask you that you have not already given a solution to. You feel me? And this is why you are a coach. This is why you are a speaker. This is why you go on stages in front of hundreds, thousands of people and preach. And all I can is sit here and listen and take it in. I think, okay, what she's saying making sense. She's given me the problem and she's also given me the solution. One of the questions that was popping up in my head earlier on was, firstly, I want to say how proud I am of you for being so open about the trauma that you have faced. And you speak about it with so much confidence, which sends this message to anyone that's faced any form of sexual abuse or any trauma, look, just be confident enough to speak about it. Be
That's right.
open about it. There is nothing wrong, you know. But the thing is, we live in the world today where we are judged. And what you were talking about, having a voice, the unfortunate dark truth of social media today is that because nobody is willing to listen to us in our inner circle physically, we're now taking that voice to social media,
Yeah.
and there's no like follow-up like question to that, okay, how do we resolve that? But that's not how we should go about it. I
That's right.
recall, I'm not sure about the two of you, but I recall moments in my life before I became awakened, where I would be in a situation, I've just gotten out of a breakup and I'm taking to social media. She's this and she's that, you know? What? There's no solution But I also felt listening to you, as a coach, listening to you, I did it because, yeah, there was nobody around me that really understood. If I told my mother about it, she was like, get over it. If I told my
Yeah.
father about it, get over it. You're young. Why are you worried? If I told my friends about it, they don't care. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
They may portray like they care, but they don't really care. So we take it to social media because even though I got that voice, I want to speak to someone about it, but no one's really listening, and now I want to take it to social media. And then people are commenting on social media, but the people who are really commenting on social media don't really care as well. And now we also have to be vigilant because then we're going to get wannabe psychologists are going to say, send me a message, DM me. I'm going to charge you $1,000. Don't worry, I'm going to help you through this process. And we're so vulnerable that we just fall for it,
Yeah.
you know.
It's true.
So yeah, from where I'm sitting, there's no other question that comes to mind I can throw away that you have not already answered. That is why you do what you do, and you do it so well. I felt
Thank
like
you.
over
Thank
the
you.
last 2 minutes, I felt like I'm in this, stadium, and Kim, sorry, not Kim, Eve here. I actually had a Kim on another podcast. Sorry about that. Eve was like
Uh,
on the stage and she's preaching, and making
Thank you
so much
so much.
sense. I need to go back and do. And like your example about, the lady knocking on the door, that just shows us the difference between spirituality versus religion, right?
Absolutely.
Because in
Absolutely.
my personal experience as well, at times when I used to go to church and think, okay,
Mhm.
people there care about me and I can go to them and I can tell them what my issue is, there was no result out of it. But the
Mm.
moment I started practicing spirituality more, you know, eh, same to your example,
Yeah.
random strangers can become, people that heal you. Random people
Mhm.
that you never met before, but I've never expected to ever meet. They become,
Yeah.
the channel for me.
That's right. You know,
Yeah.
I think
So
when we eliminate those divisions, right, of like religion, social status, all of these different gender, race, when we eliminate that, we open ourselves up to a world of infinite possibilities because we're all connected, right? We're all connected with this divine oneness, right? And what we need will come to us, whether it be in the form of a hug or whatever it is, right? Like
yeah,
it will come to us. It's opening ourselves up to that space, to be able to say, I'm ready to receive, right? That's
yeah,
really important. I think, that's one of the things that I also say, like, you have to make your decision, right? You have to choose you. That's the first thing. Choose you. Like when you're struggling with suicidal ideation and depression, or that one decision is that first step of self love that you take that will embark you on a journey that will change your life forever. Choose you and be very present with that choice. I choose me. When you choose you, you choose life, you choose spirit, you choose your oneness with the divinity, you choose all that you were born to be, all that you were created to be, you choose that, right? Not the narrative, not the story, not the trauma, not the past, none of that, not even the future, right? You're not when you choose you choose yourself right here, right now, in the present moment, right? And that's why they say, right? The present is a gift. You're the gift that you've been waiting, right? That's something Donald will always tell me. You're the gift that you've been waiting for. And I remember not being able to understand or even receive those words. And I'm like, I am not a gift, darling, and I would just dismiss his words because I wasn't ready to receive. But when I made that choice to say, I'm ready, I choose me, I want to heal. As soon as I made that choice, all of a sudden everything started to make sense because then I opened myself to receive, right? The wisdom, the love, the light, all of those different things that come to heal us and help us in this journey, right? Of self-discovery, self-awareness, self-growth, right? And that's really important. Like, if nothing else, if one of our listeners are saying, I don't know what to do. I don't even know what the first step is. I just know that I'm overwhelmed with pain and sadness and I just want to weigh out. Choose you. Choose you and say, I'm worth it. You don't have to feel it. You don't even have to believe it. Say it. Because when you proclaim with your words these things, I am worth it, you begin to internalize a new narrative. You begin to internalize a new truth, and you begin to start to walk in that truth. And that starts to manifest a different life. It brings different types of people into your life. It brings different experiences into your life. It also changes your perspective to see the things that happen to you in a different way. And that's how you begin to.
Yeah, it's all about changing the DNA, It take time. So with those affirmations of I am worth it, if you see it enough times, it's like automatic response each time now, subconsciously. You're changing your DNA. I think there was a process once online that if you just write, 10 affirmations and you practice it for like days, automatically you start to live it now. You start to walk around with I am worth it. I am untouchable.
I find it interesting. There's all this new research, right, about how words change things. They change your DNA. They change your your reality. Words help you manifest, right? The more you affirm, the more you manifest. And I said before, right, like I'm not a religious person, but I'm definitely a spiritual person. But I was raised as a Christian, and I always found it interesting that so many people wanted to express their spirituality in all these different forms that would say how righteous and advanced spiritually. I always found it interesting that in Genesis, in the beginning of the Bible, if for those, for me, I read it differently, right? But for those even that believe in creation and say, and God spoke and he created. And I said, isn't that interesting that the Bible begins with, and God spoke and he
It says too, Eve, in the beginning was the
the
Word.
word, and the word was God, right? And so
Yes, and the
isn't
Word
that,
became flesh, and
yes,
it was God the Creator. And then
exactly.
there's what I am that I
I
am.
am, exactly. And I find that so interesting. It doesn't matter, like, how we divide ourselves between these like religions and stuff like that. But if you look at these religious, like, books and you study them, there's always this like fundamental truth in, this underlying truth, and you can put different words to it. It does, but it all speaks the same thing, right? It speaks of a universal power, love, light, and it speaks of like being able to create. We are, if you believe that, right? Like we are of the creator, so therefore we become creators, and we are also like, we should also create. How do we create? With our words. Like our words are so powerful. They're so powerful. Like it doesn't matter like what religious orientation, what theoretical orientation you would think. It doesn't matter. Like our words are powerful, and we see it more and more and more. Like all these research, all this, our words are so powerful, regardless of how we feel because of our past experiences. Just being able to say, I am enough. I am worthy. I am love, I am light, I am power, I am perfect, I am whole, I am complete. Being able to speak those words, they eventually you embody those words and you become those words.
I'm the word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. Like I am God, What I believe is that, each and every single one of us is God. So like a strong affirmation that I also purchase is I am God and God is me. You know?
Yeah.
The co-creation.
Yeah.
Exactly. And as you were talking about the Bible, it's just that, we haven't been taught how to dissect. What does
Mhm.
this actually mean? Dissect it.
Yeah. I mean,
And you
it's
mentioned
funny. We
conditioning
go
at
to,
the beginning.
yeah, we go to school and we dissect the poetry and all of the literature, right? All these literary books that we study
Yeah.
during college or high school, but we don't actually take these beautiful books, right? Whether it be the Bible or the Quran or whatever, and just take all these beautiful messages from it, like not the ones that divide us, but the ones that actually unify us, the ones that make us right one as a whole, as a collective. The messages that lead us back to ourselves, back to our power, our oneness with the one, right? The I am, right? As,
I, I,
It's probably a
I
topic
was
for another show, but look at how it's divided the world. You
mm,
know, we look at Christianity. Christianity is divided into so many different divisions. And this guy says he's right, and this guy says he's right. We look at Islam. Even
mhm,
though it's more united, it's also divided in certain, tradition, how to do things, and so on. More division there as well.
yeah,
Chaotic, if you ask me. You know.
I'm sorry.
thinking, Eve, of what you said of I am worthy, right? That I choose myself, right? And I guess myself can also be the small s and the large s,
Yeah.
self and self. That, in a sense, from a spiritual perspective, since we did not create ourselves, right? We appeared,
Yeah.
that we've already been chosen.
Mm-hmm.
I choose myself and I have already been chosen
Yeah.
to be mine.
That's beautiful. I have been chosen. You know, it's easy to, kind of like politicize all these different topics because everything comes into play, right? Especially when it comes to mental health. Like you take into account the whole person. So it's mind, body, spirit, is, spirituality, religion, communities, all of these different things. But the bottom line is that hurt people will hurt people. So when you see all of these things manifesting in the world, right, instead of like diving into this energy that continues to polarize and divide and add more contention into the conversation, how about if we start seeing it for what it is? Wow, there's so many hurt people in the world, and they're just lashing out that hurt and hurting other people. And I feel that also needs to happen to change the conversation and shift the mindset, right? If we could see each other from a place of compassion and a place of empathy and a place where we can recognize that there's more hurt than meets the eye, right? And so how do we create space for people to feel safe, and instead of lashing out about issues that probably are not necessarily the center of their pain, how do we make space for people to really deal with what's happening within, so that it reflects how they interact with the world without, right? So it's all of these different things. It's funny because it seems so complicated and at the same time so simple. It's simple but complicated, and so somehow we have to find the balance in between all of it, and be
It's
able to do
complicated.
something different.
We're going to create a new word. It's complicated. Complicated.
Yeah.
And yet it's that mix, right?
Yeah.
Of the simple, it's simple and complex, and the one, O-N-E, the one and the many.
Mm.
And it's what it takes one person to take the risk, right? And then
Uh-huh.
another person and another person. And then the
Yeah.
joining together, because that support is also required.
Yeah. It is. It is. I think that, we can individually just make that decision to become the one person that's there for that one person, and vice versa. I think that the people that are doing the work can also refrain from just thinking that the work is only impactful if it reaches millions of people. Maybe it's just meant to reach one person. And like I tell, when I have these talks and with my clients or whatever, sometimes the one person that you need to reach is just yourself to be the change that you need to see in the world, right? Maybe that one person is you, right? And
Starts
so,
against with you.
yeah, and that would be enough, right? If you just focus on your healing, or if you just helps create space for somebody else to heal. It doesn't have to happen in masses, but if collectively we all decided to shift our mindset to say, I'm going to hold space for myself. I'm going to hold space for one person in my life. Can you imagine the shift that it would create, like collectively? How people will be able to just release a lot of their pain, their hurt, their trauma. I mean, it would be beautiful, right? I mean, that's my hope, right? We can hope, we can dream. I'm a big dreamer, so
Yeah.
I'll hold on to that.
I
One day
told
it will happen.
I told Diana before we came on, we were having a conversation around energy, physical, spiritual energy. And I said, one thing, no matter what I go through, is I don't lose hope ever. I'm not
That's
just
right.
talking about myself, but also hope in humanity.
Yes. Yes.
We can change, we can be more united. We can stop fighting for stupid stuff, that doesn't make sense at all.
That's right.
One is fighting for stuff where they don't even understand the full fundamentals of it. They don't even know why we're fighting. We're just fighting
Yeah.
because
We're
we
just
said we
fighting.
must fight. So, we never lose that hope. And I mean, what you mentioned at the start, which is what I also wanted to bring up, was when you said, attempting or healing the world while also healing yourself can be so
Mm.
daunting.
It,
And I'm
it
also
can be
speaking from
so,
personal,
what did you
yeah,
say?
like
It could be so,
daunting. It can be so daunting, and
yeah.
there's so much darkness there as well. And I'm speaking from personal experience. You
Yes.
know, we have to go out into the world each and every single day, and we have to heal other people.
Yeah.
And we also have to come back home and also deal with our own demons as
Yeah.
well. And it takes a lot. So,
It
what can you
does.
share on that? Like, for people out there who, want to do good towards humanity, want to do good for the world, want to make the world a better place. They
Mm-hmm.
go into the world, they do it. Some days are good, some days are bad. Then I have to come home and I got to deal with my own
Yeah.
demons now. I was going to use the word shit, but it wasn't appropriate.
Yeah. It's true. It's true.
I gotta
Hey,
come home
it's
and deal with my own
real.
shit.
It's real. It's authentic. That's real. That's authentic. That's real. It happens. And
Yeah.
I think that boundaries is a big deal, right? Like, and but there's so many ways to interpret boundaries. I feel like there's a lot of conversations about that. But what I mean is just for ourselves, knowing when to be there for others and when to be there for ourselves. That's a big one. I experience burnout. I experience all of that. Especially, I remember when I first started speaking about my story publicly. It was really interesting how people would come up to me and ask me all these very invasive questions that I wasn't ready to answer at one point. I remember, like, I was still kind of processing, but I knew that I wanted to share my story because I knew I'm like, I want to help somebody else out there. Ooh, and I remember thinking, wow, and this was, I learned this from somebody else who also was a coworker at UND. You know, she's like, you need to learn to protect yourself. You know, you need to learn when it's okay not to answer questions, when you're, you know, when you're not comfortable, when, you know, you're feeling burned out. You need to learn how to detach, and you need to learn to protect yourself. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know. And, you know, everybody asks me, and I just want to be genuine. And so she says, okay, well, I'm just going to attend the conferences with you. And I'm just going to tell people they need to back off when they need to back off until you learn your boundaries. and believe it or not, it worked, right? Because it's so hard when you want to be there for others from that genuine space, right? And you really want to help and you're committed to your work, but then also understanding that you're still going through things, you're still processing, because this is a lifelong journey. And I say this too, you know, just because I am where I am now, it doesn't mean that I don't revisit certain things, right? It doesn't mean that maybe I could be watching a movie, it might trigger a memory, it might trigger something, maybe something is happening, you know, as a society as a whole, maybe there's a specific story. Not all my clients, you know, stories like trigger me, but sometimes there's certain story and I have to remember, hey, this healing thing is forever. So maybe, you know, right now this opened up something so that you could heal a little bit more, a little deeper. But I need to make sure that I'm always aware, that I'm always mindful of where I am, so that I create that space to take care of myself and deal with my stuff. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And life happens, right? So life has a beautiful way of adding and piling on things, you know? So, you know, it's not just about the past, but like you said, it's the present. It's, you know, it doesn't always have to be about trauma or the past, but it's what's happening right now in my life. You know, it doesn't matter. You have to create space, and I call it, you know, my sacred space, right? Like, you know, if I'm in my sacred space, I need to make sure that is untouched. For me is usually I wake up 3, 4 in the morning to do my mindful practices. And so I'm meditating and I'm doing my, you know, my prayers and my gratitude prayers and all of these different things. I'm doing it from like 3, 4, 5 in the morning to like 6 in the morning. I take a couple of hours and that's my sacred time. My husband knows that he can't even wake up at that time and interrupt me. So like, this is my time. This is, you know, when I process, and this is, you know, when I allow myself to feel the pain and be with it until I'm ready to thank it and say, thank you. Thank you for what you came to teach me. Thank you for the revelations, the insights, and goodbye. You know, like pain is not supposed to stay with us, right? No matter if it's the past, it's not supposed. So, but it's important to give yourself that space and that time to do that. And for that, you need to create boundaries of space and time and all of these different things. I'm gonna piggyback on your story about the toe, right? And like if you stub your toe, all the pain gets concentrated there. Like I talk about something similar in my book. I say, you know, if you are in an accident and you break a leg, you don't ignore it. You don't just say, I'll deal with it tomorrow. I'll deal with it, you know, whenever I have time. No, you go to the hospital, right? And you make sure you get the care that you need to deal with your broken leg. And if there's an infection, you deal with that. And you need surgery, you deal with that. If you need rehab, you deal with that. And you go through the motions. But when we have emotional wounds, and when we are dealing with chronic stress, or we're dealing with depression or anxiety, or we're dealing with, because these things are invisible, we don't say, I need to. We tend to think that somehow is a luxury to have time to deal with what we're, you know, what's going on with us. No, absolutely not. Like you have to attend to that, to whatever it is that you're going through. Like you said, you know, whether it be from the past or the present, and those boundaries, and making sure that, you know, this is my time for them to be here for others, and this is my time for me. This is my self-care, my self-love. This is my time. Yeah, those boundaries are really important.
What you shared about taking time for yourself, that sacred
Mhm.
time, is so important. And I'm thinking of those people that have been in the suicide prevention field
Ooh.
and received recognition for their effort,
Oh goodness, yes.
which grew out of their own, most often, pain,
Yeah,
mental health crises.
yeah,
And some of those individuals alone one day in pain have killed themselves.
yeah,
They've died by suicide,
yeah,
which on the one hand, what is so shocking, right?
yeah.
And then to people that have admired them, right? They
Mhm.
mourn them, but they're also thinking if that person died by suicide,
Yeah,
well, why
yeah,
should I stay alive? Which of course they need to stay alive. But I think there needs to be a re-understanding about healing from what you just shared, the
yeah,
idea of maybe in therapy or in conversations with each other, the idea of saying that, and through time, your healing will be strengthened.
yes.
And it's going to be strengthened by the obstacles that you face or the
Mhm.
triggers you felt or kind of falling
Mhm.
back into the past. But remember, those are opportunities for
Absolutely.
strengthening your healing, not that it's all disappeared and you're
Yeah,
starting at zero and you should
yeah,
end your life.
yeah. I, you know, that's something that really tugs on my heart. Just the amount of, and we said this before, the amount of people in our field that go through life with unhealed trauma. And I truly believe that some of the most empathetic people in our field, some of the most compassionate people are compassionate because they know that level of pain and they really really desire to help someone else not go through that pain, and a lot of times it's because they themselves feel like they can't escape that pain themselves, and they become the rescuers, right, for others. But to understand that we're in a field where we are supposed to support one another, that we're supposed to uplift one another, that is the sole purpose of all of us that work in mental health in one way or another, right? And to slip through the cracks, right? Like as we're supposed to be the net, right? We're supposed to be the ones that catch the ones that, that are kind of slipping, but we ourselves are like full of all this brokenness, and some of us like end up letting go because they couldn't hold on anymore. I Like I said, I was one of those people, and I know I've been on the phone with people ready to end it all, and in the field, knowledgeable people that have been there for me at my worst times. And it's almost like this epidemic of what I say, loneliness and isolation. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these people just feel alone, like alone in their pain, alone in their suffering, and not having someone to be able to say, hey, hold on to me. I'm here for you. Last week, I went live on Instagram. I haven't done a live video on Instagram in like 5 years. And there was just something in my spirit that said, you know what? Maybe somebody just can't be alone tonight. It doesn't matter. And my friends were like, you're something else. You just went live on Instagram. You have nothing to say. I'm like, I'm just drinking my tea for anybody who has something to say. Just want to be here, just want to be present, just want to create space. And we were laughing about it. I was like, yeah, that's how I am. Like, my spirit moves me to do something, I do it. And not long after, I got a message in my DM. and that person tells me, I mean, you know, she was in tears because of what she was going through. And just being present and saying, hey, I'm here, like that helped her get out of a mindset that could have been really, bad. And so it's how do we create that safe space for people to not feel alone, for people to feel safe to be vulnerable. And I think it starts with us being vulnerable. I tell my husband, I'm like, oh my God, almost everybody that reaches out to me it reaches out to me because, they go through suicidal ideations because of depression and because, they've had trauma, but it's because it's almost like I give them permission to be free with their story by me being free with my story, right? But then that also has a responsibility, and that's when I have to navigate the boundaries, right? When to be there, when to be, and when to refer out, like, right? Because it's also about a collective, right? We could be the ones that like spark, something, right? That spark that moment of that person desiring change and desiring to heal, but doesn't necessarily that we're going to carry that person all the way through. Maybe the next person is the therapist. Maybe the next person is like them building a support system. Maybe the next person is, community members. Maybe the next and then, right? There's a collective. How do we build that type of support where we can hand off like, hey, now, like, I was able to be here for you for this, but now I think that you can benefit from this type of support, and be okay and normalizing that too, especially for us that are in mental health and we take everything in. No.
And it's not
No.
an abandonment.
It's not, yeah, you're not abandoning them. You're not like, oh, I don't care anymore. No, it's how do we, normalize like handing off, hey, I'm, this is where our chapter ends, but the story continues, right? This is our season is over, at least for this. It may start off fresh again for another, for another reason later on, but maybe it's time for you to now be with, a therapist or a psychiatrist or a coach or, right? And building those networks of people where we feel safe that we can refer some of our clients and some of our people. It's mental health, so it's very complex, but we have to build. We have to, if it's not there, we have to build it. So, yeah.
In what you just shared, I was thinking that there's in the storybook of our lives, there are many chapters, right? So the chapter is the metaphor, right, in terms of other forms of support. And I was also thinking, and I'm sort of laughing as I say this, that so we have our body, right? And there's the brain and the heart and the pancreas and all these organs, but it's not as if it becomes like, oh, like if the body could talk, right? As it's being formed, like, oh no, I need a liver. You know what I mean? I have a brain. Why do I need a liver? Right? Why do I need a kidney? Why do I need bones? You're creating the whole, right? So the WHOLE of helping and changing that narrative and supporting someone's life, right? There's almost the mental health body, right? Overlay on the physical body. And it doesn't mean I'm more damaged. Like, oh no, you're telling me I need like maybe inpatient or residential or DBT therapy. That's not saying, oh no, wow, you're damaged, you need this treatment. No, it's just, this is something that may help. So let's try it out.
Yeah. It's like the lavish abundance of the universe is offered to you. To think of it that way, all the support, instead of saying, oh, I need that. No, it's just extra support, that's it. But again, it's about changing the conversation and normalizing these ideas that we can need help, that we, that it's okay to ask for help and really rely on each other, right? Like I think that more often than not, we believe that we're these independent beings, individual beings. We are, but at the same time, we're part of the collective, right? So there's a connection there. Like there is an inherent connection. So why not think of ourselves as also sometimes needing to be connected to be your best selves, right? So yeah, and take ourselves out of that equation of just, being isolated and apart from the world. Like, yeah.
That seems to be what the antidote to loneliness, what you just said.
Yeah, yeah. That there's a big difference between being alone and being lonely, right? Being alone is being alone with yourself, and being alone and being lonely is actually being in the absence of yourself, right? So like, you could be alone and not feel lonely, and you could be with a million people and feel very lonely because it just means that you're in the absence of yourself. And so when you're in that space that you feel lonely and that you're in the absence of, you gotta ask yourself why, and find ways to connect back to yourself, right? And that takes a lot of vulnerability, because you have to just like speak your truth and let it all out to get to right to the core of you, to your authentic self, and to reconnect. And sometimes that requires help, assistance, support, and that's okay. That is okay.
Thinking how there's a light next to me, but if I didn't plug in the light to the electricity, right?
Yeah.
The light is there, but it also needs the connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even like as we talk, right? Like I've learned so much from the two of you, and how the way you're showing up in this platform, I admire that so much. I mean, I'm just a guest, but you're doing this, and it even like puts a little spark in me. Like, are you doing enough? Right? Are you doing enough? Right? Like, what else can you do? These conversations are so important, so important, and I really do believe that they do spark something, right? And it's like, we might be lighting a match right now, but hopefully it'll cause a whole big, wildfire, not in the literal sense, but in the spiritual sense.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what? This is like, sometimes we think this is the hard work, having the conversation, being on the platform, doing the editing, uploading. It counts for 20%. 80% of getting this message out to the masses, through so many different channels and means, that there is the difficult part.
Yeah.
I've come across so many people who have some sort of trauma that they're going through. And of course, each episode of Talking Back to Suicide is linked to a specific, piece of trauma, like, something specific. So if I come across someone and they've gone through that, I send them the link and I tell them, listen to this podcast. I give you the basics of what it is about, how it's going to assist you, with the guest that we had on. But it's up to you now to actually drink the water now,
Yeah.
and take what you can from it. But they never do, They never do. They'll take it, they'll give you gratitude, they'll say thank you, I will listen to it. They don't. And then a few days later, they come back to you with another issue, with another problem.
I mean, I was that person to other people many times, right? I was the person that cried a lot about like how I felt, or like feeling lonely and depressed, and they would give me advice, and then I would come back and cry some more and say, that's why, when I said like you have to choose, it's so important for the person to be ready to receive. It's so important, like that aspect right there. Like that's why I feel like, that's one of the things that I feel like we need to talk about more. Like, listen, yeah, this is hard work. Yes, what you're going through is difficult, but that first thing that you have to do is choose you. Make that decision, because You have to be willing, ready, and open to receive, in order to take all this in, and for it to start, making these shifts inside your consciousness, and like elevating your awareness. All of these things have to happen, but it starts with the person being ready for it on a real level. Like, I'm ready to face that pain. I'm ready to feel the pain. I'm ready to sit with the pain. And I'm
And it
ready
doesn't
to
have to
move
be
it.
the pain goes away to
Yeah.
be read, but I think that can also be a
Yeah.
trick,
Yeah.
right? Like, yes,
Mhm.
I'm going to face it when I'm feeling better
Yeah.
because I can't face it now.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that so much of what you're also sharing is that we do have the capacity, right? There
Yeah.
is the capacity to be able to face the pain while we're in the pain,
Yeah.
and also to receive the support and to not act on that pain-filled thought. Just
Yeah.
hold on. Don't act on that thought.
Yeah. And there's so many steps to healing. I think that's why when I started the Art of Mindful Living, I called it the Art of Mindful Living, because I was like, this journey to healing and spiritual enlightenment, it's like art. You don't know, right, what techniques are going to work for you. You don't know what methods, you don't know, what channels, but you need to put yourself out there and start experimenting. Like, for some people, be journaling, for some people, be prayer, for other people, meditation, for other people, yoga, whatever it is. But that willingness to just begin the journey, that willingness to just choose, I'm worth it. I'm ready. I'm worth healing, right? And
Yeah.
that, right? Like, it's just, I think that some of us have, like, internalized that we deserve this state of brokenness and suffering. We've normalized it. Actually, it's the love language that a lot of us learn, suffering. So for a lot of us, I know for me, it was scarier to let go of what I knew, even though it was painful, and to explore something absolutely new. It was scarier to let go of what was hurting me, because I was so afraid of discovering what was out there that I knew nothing about. My love language was pain. My love language was abuse. My love language was suffering. My love language was poverty. My love language was a lot of different things, right? Those things shaped my love language. And for me to let that go, it was like, I'm letting go of everything I know. I don't know anything else. So you almost feel like you're stripping yourself of the only identity that you have known. And it's an identity that it's literally, I mean, it's formed in that suffering, in that pain. So it takes, some time, and even, to muster up the courage to say, no, that doesn't define me. I'm more than that. And I'm willing to explore what that is. I'm willing to know who I am, aside from the person that was hurt, the person that was in pain, and in order, it's interesting, right? Because the pain separates us from ourselves. But in order for us to go within into authentic self, you have to face that pain. You have to break through the barriers of that pain that have separated you from yourself, and go in and discover or rediscover who you are, aside from that identity that has, defined you for so long. And it may be difficult, but sometimes it's just like I said, I keep saying that sometimes it's just taking that first step, making that decision, affirming it, declaring it, and moving forward with it. Yeah. Yeah.
Eve, we could listen to you forever. I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. I enjoyed. I'm grateful. I am so grateful. Like the work that you're doing to give a platform to voices like ours to share our stories for others. This is amazing. I'm humbled. I'm grateful. Thank you so much. I
Oh, thank
appreciate you.
you.
No, thank you.
It's back to the collective again. You know,
Yes,
Yes,
back to
I
the
was
collective.
thinking that too.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
you
Wouldn't it
know,
be wonderful if the collective were, right? Thank you.
I
yeah.
know.
None of this will be possible. All this work that we do won't be possible if it's not all of us working hand in hand together. It
Yeah.
wouldn't. You
This
know,
is
all we're doing
beautiful.
now is we're connecting the dots.
I'm excited.
All
I'm
we-
excited. Like we haven't connected in how many years? And now we've connected. I'm excited to see when we're gonna connect again. Maybe in South
Yes.
Africa for a convention or something. I don't know.
Another talk.
Yes, maybe
Yeah,
another women's conference in South Africa.
Oh my
I'm in
goodness.
for that one.
yeah, yeah.
Eve, I have a
Honestly, it's much needed.
entrepreneurial idea for you, right?
Oh, okay.
Or for all of us. I don't know if this is possible, but, and it came out of a bit of our conversation. So, you know how we have, and even in the room that I'm in right now, there's a what, fire alarm detector, right, on the ceiling. And there's a carbon monoxide detector where I'm living, right? And those are mandatory, right, in many places, right? Um, so wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a mental health detector? I
Wouldn't
don't
that
know.
be wonderful?
Right, a mental health detector that would be right put on your ceiling, and when
Oh,
your toxic thoughts are attacking you, your mental health detector would do an alarm, because
um,
sometimes we can become so identified with those thoughts that we don't challenge them. Hence also the name of the podcast, Talking Back to Suicide,
I
right?
know.
That we have a voice, right? And we need to express it and talk back. But wouldn't it be great if there could be a mental health detector?
I wish you. You know what? I have dabbled in that a little bit because you know that I have like my new app, the Art of Mindful Living app,
Yes.
and there's a feature in the app that whenever you log into the app and you're like interacting with it, it will ask you like about your mood. And what they don't know, which is an internal feature, is that if a person press sad 3 times, it gives me a notification for me to talk to them directly and send them a message.
Oh,
So if they put that they're sad 3 times, they'll get a notification. You know, would you like to talk to a coach? Would you like to talk to someone? So,
that's so fantastic. It's really,
so
you're saying, I hear you, right?
So that was a feature that I put in there. I'm like, not it's not a universal like fire detector yet, but
Yes.
hopefully when everybody downloads the app, it will become a mental health detector.
And Eve, could you give us the website address or any other information for people who want to reach out to you?
Yes, I can be reached through the website, theartofmindfulliving.com. They can find all my information there. They can find also links to our new app, the Art of Mindful Living app, and my book, The Woman in the Mirror, and that was a memoir where I talk about my journey, and it begins with telling my story of my almost suicide attempt, etc., and how I got from there, to a healing place. And I have a new book coming out, The Art of Mindful Living, the philosophy as a way of life, how to incorporate, mindfulness for us to be able to heal and empower ourselves and get to that place that you talked about, our conscious awakening, right? And like hopefully, just spark a little bit of that energy of shifting our mindset and awakening the collective consciousness to a place of learning and healing and growing and transforming together, right? Yeah.
When will
So
your new book be coming out?
It's coming out, well, by the end of this month. I cross my fingers. My ideal date, which I picked, was the first day of spring. Kind of like, hey, winter season is over. It's time to renew ourselves. And I think that for me, I'm very big into that symbolism, right? Like there's seasons in our lives, and I think that a lot of us, when we go through these dark times, they feel like winter seasons, right? And sometimes we just need a little hope, like you said, to grab onto for a new season. So March 20th, first day of spring, it's a whole collection. It's the book and the workbook, because I feel like it would be really great for people to do some self-reflection as they're reading the book and ask themselves questions about, right, themselves, and be able to dig deep in. Just take a nice, some self, time for you. Like, I want people to normalize spending time with themselves. I want people to normalize, spending time reflecting and diving in, because the truth is that all the answers that we seek are already within us. We just have to tap into them. Right? We are connected to the oneness. We're connected to this divine oneness. We're connected to this divine intelligence, right? So the answers that we seek are within. And sometimes we just need a little help getting to that space. But my hope, my desire, my heart's wish is that everybody would understand that, where we come from, what we go through, it doesn't define us. We're born to be limitless. We are a mind, body, and spirit. We were born perfect, whole, and complete. And the narrative that attaches itself to us because of the circumstances and the experiences that we go through, none of that defines us. And I really want people to, like you said, and we've been talking here, to discover and rediscover their true voice and be in that space of their authentic self and become powerful expression of divinity. We're all born and created for greatness. I truly believe that. When people say, no, we're all maybe in different ways, in different forms, but we are all created with just this beautiful ability to impact the world with our own unique light. And I just hope that somehow, I can spread a little seed around the world with my words.
We would like to help you spread those seeds. So
Yes.
if you want to later email me any information about the upcoming book, we can post that also on the Hold On campaign social media.
Thank you. I will. I'll definitely share the information. I go, and The Art of Mindful Living, whether it be on Instagram or Facebook, you can follow me. But thank you so much. Thank you. It was really my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.